Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak on Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. So I figured what we would do while we were setting up the projector is we would just do a cursory review of some of the things that we talked about yesterday, and we'll make it very interactive. So I'll ask and you answer, inshallah. So basically, let me bring up the introduction real quick. So we started yesterday with an introduction which we entitled Religion is Interpersonal Relations, Ad-Din al-Mu'amala, وأكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا. That the most faithful believer is the one who has the finest character. And we had a few introductory points that we wanted to share. The first one was Islam is not merely a religion, it's a complete and perfect way of life. And then we talked about religion being interpersonal relations. And there was something we mentioned specifically under that heading. Does anybody remember what we mentioned? The important point that we mentioned under that? About, Ad-Din al-Mu'amala is not a hadith. That's one thing. People will quote it as if it's a hadith, they'll cite it as if it's a hadith, it's not a hadith. And we said, Imam al-Albani, he said that this has no asl, has no basis in the hadith literature whatsoever. Okay? So does that mean that there's no truth to it? Does that mean there's no truth to it then? Because it's not a hadith. Is that what we said? There is truth to it. So in spite of the fact that there's no hadith to that effect, there's still what? There's still truth to it. Does anybody remember what we used to show that there is truth to it? Some of the statements we made or points we mentioned that show that there is truth to it. What were some of the proof that we mentioned that there is truth to this statement, even though it's not a hadith? Anything? Okay, but what does that have to do with interpersonal relations? Yeah, interpersonal relations is part of character in general. You need something more specific to show that, yeah, interpersonal relations are a big part, integral part of the deen, which is what's implied by the statement Ad-Din al-Mu'amala. Tfadal. Go ahead, Salim, yeah. Ayat al-Huquq al-Ashara. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made an ayah in the Quran specifically mentioning what? People with whom we have to interact and the rights that they have over us. Ahsant. Okay, good. What else?
Then you also mentioned about from a narration, Sahih Muslim from Abu Hurairah.
Hey.
About the rights that Muslim.
Ahsant. Haqq al-Muslim, Muslim sit. The rights that one Muslim has over another Muslim are 6 rights. Shows that what? This is an important part of the deen, to the point of the Prophet what? He had a special hadith where he talks about how Muslims are supposed to deal with other Muslims. What else? Anybody remember anything else? Don't put it all on Salim. Anything else that shows? How about something that shows it but not directly, more indirectly? Or something where you have to kind of like ponder over it a little bit, look beyond the surface, and you'll see that, oh man, interpersonal relations is pretty important in deen. Anybody give me that one? Ahsant. That basically, we talked about how the woman she was punished because she mistreated a cat. So if you can be punished for mistreating a cat, how much more could you be punished if you mistreat a human being, right? طيب. And the hadith of the dog, likewise. Mumtaz. All right. We also talked about the importance of character, the virtues and merits and excellence of good character. Who can give me some indications that character is important in the deen, of great significance in the deen that we mentioned? We mentioned like 5 or 6 yesterday.
Said I came only to perfect the character exemplified on high character.
Subhanallah. He says, I've only been appointed for this purpose, he says. Right? إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That tells you it must be pretty important if he says this is the only reason I'm here, right? That makes it pretty important.
And this was the way of the Anbiya in general.
Ahsant. Like what else? That shows character is important. Somebody says, man, Islam doesn't care about character. How are you going to refute them? You meet some non-Muslim and they say, your religion is just a religion that talks about monotheism and killing infidels. And you guys don't care about moral character and good behavior. How are you going to refute them? What are you going to tell them that Islam says that refutes that? Ahsant. From the beginning of his message, it was fused with what? The call to what? Good character. And we have that's based upon the hadith of Bidar, collected by Bukhari. And he said, I sent my brother to find out about this new message. That was causing a bit of a stir at Mecca. And when he came back, I asked him, well, what does he say? What does he call to? He said, إِنَّمَا رَأَيْتُهُ يَدُ إِلَى مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He said, I found him what? Calling to what? The exalted standard of character. This is what early on in Mecca. Like what else? What else? Something significant, huh?
I don't know what's significant, but you said when Abu Sufyan went to the king, someplace, and he asked him, what is the Prophet calling to? And he said, it's calling to
Ahsant.
character.
Ahsant, yeah, he told us, so he mentioned certain character traits the Prophet was calling them to. Among them was, I think, Silat al-Rahim. So that was mentioned later, but yeah, that definitely can be used as a proof, yeah.
And the Prophet mentioned that nothing is heavy on the scale
Ahsant.
than the good characters.
That right, that nothing's heavier. Not even salat, not even jihad, fi sabilillah, is heavy on the scales in what? Good character. طيب ثم بعد ذلك, the Prophet said, أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا. The believer whose faith is most complete is the one who has the best character. All right, طيب ثم بعد ذلك, we mentioned that this is a neglected subject. And we showed that. We did a little survey. When's the last time you heard a khutbah about Bil Walidain? A couple people, they said, yeah, all the time. I like to know what masjid you go to, Akhi?
I come from India.
You heard it in India? No, we're talking about here. You didn't tell us that yesterday. Astaghfirullah. That ruined our survey, Akhi. Our data's been corrupted. But here, I'm gonna be honest with you, like I said, Muslim for a long time. Never heard a khutbah on Bil Walidain. And if I did hear one, it wasn't memorable. I don't remember. Okay? Whether I was here or even when I was in the kingdom. I never remember a khutbah about Bil Walidain. It's such an important topic. Never heard a khutbah about Bil Walidain. Never heard a khutbah about smiling being a charity. And a lot of people just don't smile. They just don't smile. Muslims, they don't smile. I remember once I had like some electronic issues with my car, and I took it to this guy, and he said, yeah, we're going to bring this guy, he's like an expert electrician, and he's going to fix it. And the guy was from an Arab country, which will remain nameless. And so when he came, I greeted him. I was like all, boisterous, and, I was like, Assalamu alaikum. And he was just like, and he just started working on the car. And as I'm standing over there trying to, make conversation with him or whatever, he acted like I wasn't even there. Did his job, finished it, and just walked off. And it's like, just people who just, I don't know, man, they're just not friendly, they don't have, and it's not uncommon, And part of it's probably because they don't think this is part of the deen. It's not important. They don't even think it's important. Why? Why bother? So we talked about that being a neglected subject, and then the result of that is that you have this character what? Vacuum. People don't talk about it. It must not be important. And as a result, people what? They don't practice it. In fact, they practice the opposite. And when people talk about it, they belittle it. They downplay. Right? We mentioned that there's no contradiction between commitment and character, because a lot of people think that it's either this or that. Either you're going to be concerned about character, or you're going to be committed to the deen. But the committed people are not going to be concerned about what? Character and those types of things. Then we mentioned that a lot of people who are victims of the character vacuum they have fallen to the what? Deception of the shaitan. And they think what? Character doesn't have anything to do with the deen, and that's what the trick of the shaitan. And finally, we talked about how human character is two types. What are the two types, Shabab? Ya Ikhwan? Ahsan. So you got Jibiliya, person's born with it. And then you got you've got muktasaba, which means it's developed. You have to develop it. And so basically, if we don't have a quality that Allah loves, it's our job to try to develop it, to work on developing that quality. We can't just say, hey, you know, if Allah wanted me to have it, He would have given it to me. No, we have to work at that. But that said, we're all set up. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off. We were talking about the kindness between husband and wife. And we'll just quickly review. We started out talking about, we had a few questions. Why do people get married? Are these the right or wrong reasons? How can each of these motives affect the outcome of marriage? Should we expect to get something out of it? And then, what does Allah want us to get out of it? Because what we expect to get out of it, we need to try to make it in line with what Allah expects us to get out of it. Okay? So we talked about that, and we talked about three main things. We talked about Allah wants husband and wife to be what? A libas for each other, a garment for each other. We talked about what that means. It means that they cover each other's faults and conceal their defects. We said this is supposed to be what? A firash, a partner in intercourse and intimacy. A wrapper, a lihaf, indicates what? Closeness. That's supposed to be the closest person to you. Somebody you can what? You can trust with your secrets. You can, And then finally, relaxing. Somebody who what? Puts you at ease and relaxes you. We said that another thing Allah wants is that you live with each other in a way which is acceptable. Live with each other in a way which is acceptable and almost enviable. People look and they say, man, I wish we had what they had. You follow me? That's what Allah wants the marriage to be like. And then last but not least, He wants the marriage to foster tranquility, love, and mercy. And then we talked about a lot of marriages in Islamic communities right now are not like that. And how we need to get back to that. And then we came with the dilemma of, well, how do we do that? And then we said that basically there's a few methods, or there's one common method. We call that the traditional method. That's where we talk a lot about rights, entitlements, duties, responsibilities. And we said that has its pros and its cons. So what we're going to do in this particular setting, rather than take that approach, is we're going to take an objective-based approach. An objective-based approach, which means that we know what Allah wants us to get out of marriage, and we're going to do the things that the Quran, the Sunnah, and common sense tell us that we should do to what? To get those things out of marriage. With that said, we started out on the path, and we mentioned some of those things that we should do to get what? Get those things out of marriage. And we said, first and foremost, treat your spouse as you would like to be treated. Okay? That your spouse is not just an extension of you, but your spouse is someone who has what? Their own wants, their own aspirations, their own needs. And you need to make it your business to give them what they want, just like you want them to make it their business to give you what you want. Then by that, like we mentioned, don't keep score. Don't be a scorekeeper. Don't keep this running tally. I did this, and have you done something which is commensurate to what I did? Reciprocal. If not, then what? I'm going to get after you, and I'm going to go on strike until what? Until I feel that you've matched what I've done, etc. We said we shouldn't have this approach in marriage, that there's no such thing as a favor in marriage. And that mentality is going to create what? Bitterness, resentment, etc. Then by that, like we talked about lifting your partner up and not putting your partner down. That really, I'm telling you honestly, ikhwan, wa akhawat, insults have no place in marriage, man. Insults have no place in marriage. If two people can't live together without insulting each other, they don't need to be what? They don't need to be together. Okay? So insults have no place in marriage. If you can't say something good, don't say anything at all. As the Prophet said in the hadith, من يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him say something good or remain quiet. Then about that, we talked about you can catch more flies with honey. We talked about being gentle. That gentleness is your friend in marriage. And be kind, be gentle, and do nice things, be nice. And even if you have to criticize in what? In a nice way. All right, catch more flies with honey. ثم بعد ذلك, accentuate the positive. There's no such thing as a perfect wife. No such thing as a perfect husband. So, if you're thinking or expecting or hoping that your wife or husband is going to be perfect, just get that out of your mind. So now they got these faults, and those faults may annoy you, they may vex you, they may agitate you. And if you let it, that agitation will fester and will cause what? Tension and ill feelings. So what you have to do is you have to focus on what? On the good things that spouse has and downplay the negative. Accentuate the positive, downplay the negative. So we gave the example, you have a wife who what? She's homely. But she's a great cook, keeps the house clean, awesome mother, takes excellent care of the children. She's very supportive. She has all these what? Good qualities. Accentuate that. Focus on that. Don't focus on what? Her homeliness, if there's such a thing, right? Wife is not the best cook and doesn't keep the house as clean as she should, but she's beautiful, okay? Always looks nice, always smells nice, and does very nice things. She's very generous, always thinking of the husband, okay? So he comes home, she bought him a new shirt, right? New pair of pants, okay? Saw that his pants needed some mending, mended the pants. That's the kind, she really what? Kind of caters to the husband. So she has all these what? Positives. Accentuate the positive and don't what? Don't focus on the negative. ثم بعد ذلك, spend quality time. We talked about how sometimes this is challenging in the fast-paced world in which we live in. But what we have to do is we have to be like the Prophet ﷺ, who wore a lot of hats and was very busy. He would be very innovative and creative in the ways that he sought to what? Spend quality time. So what was one of the things the Prophet would do, given his busy schedule, to spend quality time with his family? Tafadhal, Sunni.
He shared in some of the family chores in the house.
Ahsan. So things that they normally would do separately, he would what? Join in with them, do it with them, so while they were doing the chores, they were actually what? Spending time together. We gave practical examples for today. So for example, husband and wife are done with dinner, and now there's some cleanup. So the husband can help her do what? Clean it, gather up all the dishes, okay? If they typically wash by hand, she can wash, he can rinse and dry, right? If they're gonna rinse and load the dishwasher, she can rinse and he can do what? Load. And while they're doing that, they can what? Have a conversation. If the wife typically would go to the grocery store and buy the needs of the house, the husband would just do what? He would tag along, and while they're doing the shopping, they can what? Talk and discuss and get caught up. So this is one of the creative ways or innovative ways that we can what? We can spend quality time with our spouse. But the Prophet ﷺ, in spite of all the hats he wore, many more hats than anyone in this room could possibly wear, the Prophet still made a point to what? To spend quality time with his family. ثم بعد ذلك, be affectionate. And we talked about this in some great detail. And really it's something that's lacking in the Muslim community. The affection between husband and wife, and they become people who generally reserve affection for a particular time of day and a particular place in the household, and they shouldn't do that. We talked about how they shouldn't do that, how the Prophet was a very affectionate man, and he's our example in everything. Okay? You want to be a good husband? Look at his example. Part of that example is being very affectionate. We also talked about how it's important for parents to do this, not just because it's part of the deen, for their own sake, but for the sake of who? Their children. Their children need to see this. Children need to see this so they know that what? This is part of the deen, and they know how to be affectionate themselves. Because in many cases, we're not sitting our child down and saying, hey, this is a young man, this is how you be a good husband. You have to do A, B, C. We're not doing that. And the wife is not saying, or the mother's not saying to her daughter, young lady, this is how you be a good wife. You have to do A, B. No, they're not doing that. So since we're not giving them actual explicit instructions, we have to teach them implicitly through what? Through our example. We have to show them that what? There's nothing wrong with being what? Affectionate. When you don't do it, they think what? They think it's wrong. It's not proper. So they get into a relationship with someone, that person wants to be affectionate, and they're always what? They're always backing away. And that creates what? Problems between the couple. The thing about that, if we left off, we would live according to your means. A recent survey of certified divorce financial assistants. A recent survey by these specialists indicates one of the 3 leading causes of divorce is what they call money issues and financial disagreements. And one of the respondents to the survey actually noted the emotional connection of money with safety and security in many people makes the financial disagreements more salient than other disagreements. So what happens, especially in a capitalist society like the one we live in, is that people connect security, safety, and stability with what? With money. If we have it, al-hayatu jamila. If we have money, everything is swell. If we don't have money, the whole world is what? Is crashing down around us, right? That's how people think. So what ends up happening is that when there's money issues, those money issues create or give birth to tension, argumentation in the home. That's why it's critical for couples in Islam to live within their means and not to overextend themselves. If the couple spends money which they don't really have on things that they don't really need and can't afford, luxurious clothing, fine furnishings, cars, homes, etc., they won't be able to address some of those what? Those basic and essential needs. They will also find themselves in debt, which a lot of couples end up doing. They get deep in debt. When there's debt, there's what? There's arguments about money and the lack of what? Of actual what? Cash flow. And this creates what? Naturally creates what? Tension, creates enmity, creates bitterness. And all of that undermines what? The love, the mercy, and the compassion that marriage is supposed to what? To produce. So obviously, not only we're supposed to do the things which produce love and mercy, but we have to what? Avoid the things which will undermine those things. And one of those things is living beyond our means. But the next matter that we need to concern ourselves with is giving thanks, showing appreciation, and never taking your spouse for granted. Give thanks, show appreciation, and never take your spouse for granted. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, Man la yashkur lillah, man la yashkur linnas, la yashkur lillah. Whoever does not thank the people has not thanked Allah, has not properly thanked Allah. And the reality is that people like to be thanked. And they like to feel appreciated. And no one likes to be taken for granted. Nobody likes to be made to feel like your presence and your absence, they're the same as far as I'm concerned, right? Nobody likes to feel like that. So it's incumbent upon us as spouses to say please and thank you. Say jazakallah khair. And every time your spouse does something, no matter how insignificant, say what? Say thank you, please, jazakallah khair. And say it from your heart like you mean it, and never make them feel like they have to do what you ask. Even if it's your right, don't make them feel like they had to do it. Like sometimes what happens is that there's like a statement in Arabic that they say, La shukr ala wajib. Okay? There's no thanks for something which is an obligation. If you have to do it, I don't have to thank you for it. That mentality doesn't work in marriage. You need to be saying what? Thank you. Even though you're entitled to something, still say please and say thank you. They might say don't mention it. You still what? You still mention it. And don't fall into that rut of, like I said, you have to do it. Why am I thanking you for something that you have to what? That you have to do. That's the wrong approach. And also remember the hadith, da'iman wa abadan, where the Prophet said, he said, I saw the hellfire, and I saw that most of its inhabitants were women. There was a woman in the audience when the Prophet mentioned this hadith. So she said, Lima ya Rasulullah. She said, why? Why will most of the people in hellfire be women? He said, يُكْثِرْنَ اللَّعْنَ. يُكْثِرْنَ اللَّعْنَ. Because women, they curse too much. They curse too much. They basically have a tendency to become in a heightened emotional state, and then they do what? They say things about people that they will later regret. Okay? يُكْثِرْنَ اللَّعْنَ وَيَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرَ. And they're ungrateful to their husbands. Then he went on to say, a man will be good to them continuously for years on end. And then he will do one thing that they dislike. And the woman will say, Wallahi. Listen to me now. Wallahi, she says. Wallahi ma ra'aytu minka khayran qat. She'll say, by Allah, you've never done anything for me. And wallahi, this is not uncommon. Woman gets upset, and her husband has, for example, taken her for Hajj. Her husband has bought her diamond rings and gold sets. Her husband has taken her, for example, miles across oceans to visit her family. Okay? Her husband has paid for her college education. Her husband has bought her a home, bought her, garments and clothes, given her children, housed her father who was ailing. Her husband has done all these things. And then he does one thing she doesn't like, and she says, you've never done anything for me. I mean, this, I'm telling you, if that's not ingratitude, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Somehow they can actually forget, but that one thing that you do that's bad can make them forget all the what? All the good you've done. And this is an example the Prophet gave. I'm not trying to let men off the hook, because men can also be what? Very ungrateful and say that their wives have not done anything, and their wives have birthed them children, and their wife have cleaned up after them for years on end, and ironed their shirts, done their dirty laundry, etc. But the point that I'm trying to make is it's not a gender thing. It's not chauvinism. At the end of the day, husbands and wives have to be what? Grateful. And they can't fall into that big mistake of using absolutes. Always and never. Those are two words you got to be really careful. You never help me with the children. Is that true? Right? You always put me down. You never have my back. Always and never are two words you have to be very careful with these absolutes. Because very seldom are they what? Are they accurate? And usually they're what? Very unjust. So to be very careful with that. And always what? Give thanks and show appreciation. And never take your spouse for granted. You guys ever heard the statement, one man's trash is another man's treasure? There's always somebody waiting to appreciate that person you underappreciated. And people sometimes learn the hard way. They're in a marriage with someone. They don't appreciate that person. And that person what? Moves on. They get tired of being underappreciated, devalued. And then they meet someone or they get married again, and that person what? Appreciates them. And that other person is what? Left alone, full of what? Regret. Knowing that they'll never find anyone what? As good as that person was. But again, they didn't appreciate them when they had the opportunity. They took them for granted, and now that person has moved on. Also, don't fall into the rut of what they call in Bil Arabi, we say, كثرة الإمساس تذهب الإحساس. That the more you're exposed to something, you want to write that down, Amr? كثرة الإمساس تذهب الإحساس. Which basically means that the more you are exposed to something, the more likely you are to take it for granted, right? To become desensitized, right? It's like your wife always, like anybody a big time coffee drinker, like you can't even like function in the morning without coffee, okay? So you have like a wife who wakes up 30 minutes before you get up and turns on what? On the coffee maker. Makes the cup just the way you like it and puts it on the counter. So you stumble out of bed and you're banging against the hallway walls trying to get to the kitchen. You get there, you reach your hand out and that cup's right there. It's like you wake up now. And then she goes and visits her parents for the weekend or something. And there you are, stumbling, boom, boom, boom. When you get there and you reach your hand out and what? And there's nothing there and you fall flat on your face because you don't have that coffee to wake you up. And then you realize what? Man, you know what I mean? It's like I'm like, she's like my right arm. I can't function without her. That's when you realize when it's what? When it's gone. Because kathratul imsas tuthibul ihsas. The more you expose to something, the less like you are to really appreciate it. It's important for us to be the people of shukr, the people who thank our spouses and sit down sometimes and reflect upon all the things that they do for us and have done for us that make us indebted to them and for which we should be very appreciative to them. So that said, we'll go on to get your priorities straight. Get your priorities straight. After your parents and blood relatives, no one is more deserving of your good character, fine manners, kindness, and respect than your spouse. After your parents and your relatives, no one comes before your spouse. So make sure your behavior reflects this. Ahmad and Nasa'i have collected, and Al-Hakim has authenticated the hadith on the authority of Aisha that she said, Ya Rasulullah, man a'zama an-nasi haqqan al-mar'ah, qala zawjuha. In a hadith collected by Tirmidhi, in this hadith, Aisha, she said, O Messenger of Allah, who has the most right over a woman? And the Prophet said, her husband. In a hadith collected by Tirmidhi on the authority of Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, خيركم خيركم لأهلي وأنا خيركم لأهلي. He said, the best of you are those who treat their wives the best, and I'm the best of you in the treatment of my wives. So now look at the hadith. The Prophet said, the best of you are those who treat their wives the best, as if to say what? This is what? This should be your number one priority. Very high on your list of priorities is what? How you treat your family. So both of these two hadiths, when you look at them, teach you that what? On the list of priorities, your spouse should be pretty what? Pretty high. And when you're going to try to treat somebody good, and you have to look at you have to look at the people who have the most priority to your good treatment, they better be pretty high on that list. And Ash-Shawkani, he expounds on this hadith, and he says, the hadith calls attention to the person who has reached the highest level of goodness and who is most deserving of being described with it. And he is the one who treats his family the best. For indeed, one's family are those most entitled to a pleasant expression, good character, kind treatment, acts of benevolence, and protection from harm. Sure. So, Ash-Shawkani says the hadith calls attention to the person who has reached the highest level of goodness and who is most deserving of being described with it. And he is the one who treats his family the best. For indeed, one's family are those most entitled to a pleasant expression, good character, kind treatment, acts of benevolence, and protection from harm. Then he said, whenever a man is like this, he is the best of people. But whenever he is the opposite of this, then he is on the other side of the spectrum of evil and wickedness. Then he said, and many people fall into this error. And this is where you got to really focus in. Many people fall into this error. You see a man, if he enters his home, he is the worst of people in manners, the most intimidating, and the least kind and compassionate. So he loses all the kindness, all the compassion, all the gentleness, all of the generosity when he enters what? The home. He forgets all about that, although they have the most right to these characteristics. But if he meets his companions and comrades, he is soft-spoken, well-mannered, easygoing, and extremely generous. His son comes and says, Dad, the shoes I'm wearing have holes in them, and I need a new pair of shoes. Get out of my face. All you guys do is ask for stuff, right? Friend calls him a few minutes later. Hey, man, I just had a flat tire, and I don't have the money to get a new one. How much is it going to cost? $100. Okay, I'll be right there. So it's like, who has more right to what? That generosity. That he be there for them in their time of need. His child or what? Or his best friend. You see this all the time. That people will what? Will be very nice to their friends, generous with their friends, but not the same with what? With their wives and children. Then he says, and there can be no doubt that whoever is like this has been forbidden success and has deviated from the right way. May Allah protect us. So it's critical that we do what? We get our priorities straight. And that we make our partners the primary recipient of our graciousness and kind treatment. And we avoid the common mistake that Ash-Shawkani referred to in this quote, which we see playing out repeatedly in marriages and contributing to their ruin. So how many husbands are greeted daily by the unattractive, repulsive, and perhaps grotesque appearance of their wife, who says, when she's asked, I don't know, what happened today? Did you have a bad day? I don't know. And she says, well, I had no time to do my hair. I had no time to shower. I was too busy with your bad children, and I didn't have time to do my hair, fix myself up, put on any decent clothes. I'm in the same clothes I've been running around the house after them with, etc. But then if she's given a call, okay, and told, hey, there's a wedding reception, there's a get-together, Sister so-and-so is getting ready to go, we're going to bid her farewell, then she has all the time in the world to do what? To fix herself up and to pick out a nice dress and to do her makeup, etc., okay? And make herself beautiful. And this is something that happens a lot. Or maybe she says she's too tired to cook and to clean and to do laundry at home. But if a friend were to call and say, hey, Sister so-and-so just had a baby and we're going to cook for her, can you cook tonight? She says, yeah, I'll whip up something in 20, 30 minutes. So now she has all the time in the world to cook because there's a friend of hers who needs her. But she didn't have time to cook for what? For her husband. Likewise, the wife wants to talk to her husband about whatever. And he says, I don't have time, I'm busy, I'm stressed out right now, I can't do it. But then his friend calls and he talks to him for what? For an hour. So you see, and this is something that your spouse is not oblivious to. They see this playing out. They see how you didn't have time for them, but now all of a sudden you have time for someone else. And this is going to cause problems because they feel like what? I'm not important. I'm so far down on the list of priorities, right? That's going to cause tension that undermines the love, the mercy, the tranquility, and the objective that marriage is supposed to achieve. So we have to get our priorities straight and realize that our spouses deserve what? Deserve the best that we have. طيب ثم بعد ذلك consider and respect your spouse's sensibilities. We can make that shorter and just say be considerate, right? Be considerate. It's a long drawn out way of saying be considerate. All right? So basically what does that mean? It means if you know that something annoys your spouse, invokes their anger, upsets them and vexes them to no end, right? And by you intentionally doing that thing, you're going to put some unnecessary strain on your relationship. If you know this, then don't do it. Leave it. Especially if it's something that you can leave. Okay? Something that you have the option to do or not to do. Then you leave it. And don't be like some people that get bogged down about, well, it's not haram? It's not haram? I'm not doing anything haram? Yeah, okay, it's not haram. Okay? But it's hurting your spouse, it's annoying your spouse, and it's creating tension in your relationship, so just what? Just leave it. Okay, looking at the big picture. It's not haram, but if you leave it with this intention, you'll get what? The reward, and also you'll what? You'll bring about one of the objectives or some of the objectives that marriage is supposed to achieve. Love, mercy, compassion, tranquility, etc. That you're undermining that by what? By doing these things which vexes your spouse. Is there any precedent for this? Any precedent for this? Yes, certainly. If you look at the famous story of Asma bint Abi Bakr, that she mentions that she was married to Abdullah ibn Zubair, and that Abdullah ibn Zubair was given a haqal, was given like a little piece of land by the Prophet that he could what? He could farm, cultivate, get crops, and sell them at market for a living. So the piece of land was maybe like 1.5 miles outside of Al-Madinah. And because Az-Zubair would go out and work and do other things, somebody had to tend to that land. So that became the responsibility of Asma bint Abi Bakr. She would go out 1.5 miles outside the city on foot. And we're talking about 1.5 miles in terrain, which is quite what? Which is quite rugged, perfect. Okay? And probably not in some Dr. Scholl's either, right? Okay, we're talking about poor people who may have to go on barefoot, or they would have to take some material, just wrap it around their feet, or leather socks, which are all, and she would have to go on this rugged terrain, walk 1.5 miles to what? Just to get to the haqal. So then when she would harvest the grains, etc., she would have to put them in a bowl or some type of sack and put that on her head and do what? Walk now 1.5 miles back on this rugged terrain, okay, with poor footwear, okay, with a sack of grain on her head. So what happened one time was that while she was doing this, returning from the haqal, the Prophet ﷺ came along with his companions on his what? On his camel. And they saw her situation. The Prophet felt compassion for her. So he brought his animal close and he made it kneel down, signaling to her to get on so he could what? Give her a ride the rest of the way. Okay? To lighten her burden. Is anything haram about that? Anything haram? It can't be haram because what? The Prophet did it. It can't be haram. Nothing haram. She's not doing anything haram. It's the Messenger of Allah. Would any one of you feel uncomfortable, let's just say for the sake of argument, if we had, that pleasure of living in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and your wife came home, or you came home and your wife said, yeah, the Messenger of Allah gave me a ride today. Would anyone feel uncomfortable about that? Wouldn't you feel like blessed? You'd feel special because your wife was given a ride by the Messenger of Allah. But you know what Asma said? She said, I remembered Az-Zubair's jealousy. And he was the most jealous of men. Okay? She remembered what? His sensibility. Zubair might not like that. And just because Zubair wouldn't like it, even though it's not haram, she what? She stood in her place with her head down. And the Prophet got the message that she wouldn't accept the ride. And he rode on. This is an example from many examples that what? The companions would consider the sensibility of what? Of their spouse. You don't like it? It bothers you? Okay, khalas. There's nothing haram about it. Okay? Okay? I like to put the spoons on this side of like for example, there's a stove and there's like a drawer here, there's a drawer here, right? I like the spoons on this side of the stove. Okay? But she likes the spoons on what? This side. I'm not going to go in this drawer and every time I see the spoons on that side, move them to what? This side. And then she gets annoyed and then moves. No. You like the spoons over there, that makes you, okay, it's not haram. Khalas. Just put the spoons over there, whatever. Okay, because why? We're supposed to be considerate of each other and not do things which will what? Which will vex and annoy, even though it's not haram. ثم بعد ذلك, compromise and be content. Compromise and be content. And what that basically means is that you and your spouse are not always going to want to do the same things. Not always going to want to do the same things the same way. And somebody is actually going to have to give in, cave in, compromise, and say, this time we're going to do it your way. Okay? Or we're going to do it half my way, half your way. So we both, neither one of us will get all of what they want, but neither one of us will be deprived of any of what they want, or some of what they want. And Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentioned how the Prophet ﷺ, he would do this. He would do this. So he said, for example, regarding compromise, he said, وَكَانَ إِذَا هَوَيَتْ شَيْئًا لَا مَحْذُورَ فِيهِ تَابَعَهَا عَلَيْهِ. Said the Prophet ﷺ, whenever his wife wanted to do something which was not prohibited, but it was not his preference, he acquiesced, went along with her, and did what she wanted. Okay? So she wants to go to Home Depot because they have like some kind of flower expo, right? Floral expo. She wants to just go and see and sit in some of those like little classes that they have, and they teach you how to plant certain foliage and how you're supposed to water, how often do you water, should you fertilize, should you not fertilize, which fertilizer should you use. She wants to go for that expo and spend 4 hours talking about foliage and plants and this, that, and the other. Outdoor plants. And you're like, man, I do not want to go and do this. But you do what? You go anyway, right? And you don't go and then go to the hardware section because you like all those toys, right? No, you actually sit there and listen to what? Listen to talk about foliage. Oh, that's interesting. I really didn't know that, Miracle Grow versus, I didn't know that, You actually, he just what? Tabahale. He just what? He would go along with her. So you guys know the famous hadith where I think the Ethiopians, they did a demonstration of their spearmanship and some of their, dancing. They did it in the Prophet's mosque. And Aisha was curious about that. She wanted to see that. So the Prophet ﷺ positioned himself in such a way where she could what? She could be concealed and she could peer over his shoulder and what? And watch. The Prophet's not really interested in that. But she was. And he just stood there and waited till what? Till she got tired and lost interest. And that's when what? When what? He turned away. So she wanted to do something, tabahade. Just, khalas, I'll go along with it. So as far as contentment, Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentioned, وكذلك كان هديه وسيرته في الطعام لا يرد موجودا ولا يتكلف مفقودا. He says, and likewise was his guidance and his practice when it came to food. He didn't refuse anything prepared for him and never requested that anything unavailable be brought to him. So he didn't have these these ridiculous demands that, things that fruit that's out of season, be brought to him, or, some meal that was very difficult to make be made for him. He just would eat whatever was what? A bit content. Totally content. Satisfied, whatever you have. To the point that not only that, look at the Prophet ﷺ. He was the kind of person who would do what? And Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned it. He says, no wholesome food was ever placed before him except that he ate it, unless he had a natural aversion to it. So whenever something was given to him, he just ate whatever it was, unless what? He had a natural aversion to it. There's some foods that everybody doesn't like. Naturally. It's not something that you had a bad experience with it, you have an allergic reaction to it. No, it's just, I don't like that. It's natural. I can't control it. It's not something I've chosen not to like. It's what? I don't like it. For example, lima beans. I will not eat that. Natural aversion, lima beans never did anything to me, but I don't like lima beans. Who has a food that they don't like? Musa, huh? Squid. Okay, huh? Salim.
It would have been the same thing.
Give me something else. I'm not going to eat the, huh? Okra. Oh, thank you, brother. I'm right there with you. Huh? Atfadal. Babar.
Bitter vegetables.
Huh? Which ones? Which vegetables? Cauliflower?
Cauliflower.
You like cauliflower? You don't like it. Okay. Atfadal, ya akhi. Give me a food you don't like. Sauerkraut. Oh, good one. You. No, don't look back. You. No. The young man is looking right. Look at you. Yes, sir. Boiled carrots. Oh, that's a good one too. Atfadal, Sheikh. Iqbal.
Potatoes?
Really? Yeah. Oh, I love potatoes. Haram, Sheikh. You gotta try them, man. طيب المهم شوف. So, I mean, the only foods that the Prophet would refuse were foods that what? It just natural. Oh, no, I can't eat that. Other than that, he would what? Eat whatever it was. Then he says, Shuf, he says, And he would even compliment, he goes on to say, he would leave it without prohibiting its consumption. Then he said, he never criticized food or a meal that was presented to him. Never said anything negative. And this is something that men, you have to be really You have to be really careful about, because we do have a tendency, I'm not like that. You guys have a tendency, right? To be too candid about your opinions about the food, and even sometimes too critical. Too critical. Got to be careful with that. Don't do that. If you got something good to say it. Nothing good to say, just be quiet. Okay? The Prophet would never criticize any food that was placed before him. If he craved it and found it palatable, he ate it. And if he didn't, he simply refrained. Which is important too. The woman shouldn't If you refrain, shouldn't And don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. He just didn't like it. And that's it. That's the end of it. Okay? Don't make him say something negative when he refrained from saying something negative. Then Shuf, look at this, underline this point. And he said, وَكَانَ يَمْدَحَ الطَّعَامِ أَحْيَانًا. And he would even compliment the food on occasion. If the food was good, he would He would say so. Another thing that men don't do, or have a tendency not to do, is they have a tendency not to To compliment. The food's good, say so. Tell them that. They want to be pat on the back. They want to be, they want to be given an attaboy. They want to be given a blue ribbon. Man, that was some really good biryani. Right? That was some really good okra. Who said okra? Right? They want to be, you got to say that. The Prophet Ashuf, the Prophet, man, he was an awesome man. Once he came to his family, he said, do you guys have any, adam? Do you have any, it's not adam, it's udum, I think. Yeah. So do you have any udum? Do you have any sauce, something for dipping? They said, we don't have anything except vinegar. So this Prophet said, give it to me. And he took some bread, right? And he starts dipping it in the vinegar. And he starts chatting up the vinegar. He says, ni'mal udum al-khal. Ni'mal udum al-khal. He starts praising what? He says, oh, this is a great dipping sauce. Oh, this is a great dipping sauce. He starts praising the vinegar. It's vinegar. But he's praising it, giving his wives credit for this vinegar that they had made. So this is another thing, be content. And don't be stingy with With your compliments. They do something, they make something good, tell them how good it is.
Can I just say something?
تفضل يا شيخ.
For the vinegar, that could be also maybe I'm just asking.
Hey.
It could be guidance hidayah, because today the research shows that vinegar is one of the most healthy, particularly apple cider and vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
The people who specialize in stomach and
Has a lot of health benefits.
very healthy. So could that be guidance? That
It could be.
It's not coincidence that it's actually healthy.
It could be, but there's no I guess, contradiction between its guidance, that vinegar is good for you, it's a good thing, and also at the same time, guidance in another way, min jihatin ukhra, that praise the food, say good things about the food.
Vinegar as main dish.
Subhanallah. Allah al-musta'an wa alayhi tuklan. طيب, so compromise and be what? And be content. طيب, ثم بعد ذلك advise and be advisable. Advise and be advisable. I mean, in reality, ikhwan, no matter how good the two individual members of a couple are, great woman, great man, really pious, really committed, no matter how committed they are to doing the right thing and being good, husbands and good wives for each other, there's going to be some faults, there's going to be some shortcomings, there's going to be some errors, some transgressions committed, even if they're most likely inadvertent, because they're good people. So when that happens, you have to foster an environment of mutual advice. That basically, advise, it means that if there's something that the person is doing, which upsets you, which annoys you, which agitates you, you can't just what? You can't bottle up those feelings and let them fester until they ultimately do what? Explode. And a small thing causes you to what? To lose your temper, and the person is saying to themselves, man, why is this upsetting you? But you're not upset about that. You're upset about what? This other thing which you've, or other things which you have bottled up and kept inside. So advise means what? If there's a problem, if there's an issue, if there's an issue, then go ahead and what? Say it. Okay? Speak about it. Have a sit down, have a dialogue, have a discussion that, hey, this thing that you're doing, it bothers me, it disturbs me, it concerns me, etc. Be advisable means that when that person comes to you and says, this part of your character, this part of your behavior, it bothers me. It's creating problems in our marriage. You have to be someone who can take that, who can take constructive criticism and try to find out what you can do to make that or to fix whatever's broken. You have to be that person. You can't be the person who becomes defensive, who shuts down, who starts what? Crying and makes the other person feel that you're the victim. And so what they end up doing is what? Is not, I can't advise you anymore. I just have to bottle up my feelings because every time I tell you something, you get what? You get upset. So basically, that's what we mean by advise on one side. If there's something bother you, say it. Be advisable. If someone says it, be able to what? To take that, accept the constructive criticism, and try to figure out what you need to do to make amends. And because this is such a sensitive topic, and sometimes we need help, I'm going to give you some helpful tips about advice. The first one is choose an appropriate time. Choose an appropriate time to advise. So a lot of times people don't accept our advice because we're advising at a time in which they're unable to accept it. So for example, let's say a husband and wife, they start arguing about something. And they're both in a heightened emotion state, and the atmosphere is very tense. They're both very angry. That's probably not a good time to tell the person, you are like this and you do this. That's just not the appropriate time. You're gonna have to save that for a time when what? Cooler heads have prevailed. Both people have calmed down. They're more able to what? To accept the type of advice. Also, scholars have mentioned, and counselors have mentioned, that when a husband first comes home from work and hasn't had a chance to what? Decompress. That's not a good time to what? To basically tell him about all of his what? His faults and shortcomings. So that's, as soon as he walks in the door, don't just lay a bunch of his faults and shortcomings at his what? At his feet. That's not a good idea. So you have to choose what? An appropriate time. Number 2, check your intentions. Don't advise to humiliate, deride, or belittle. It's a big problem with advice, not just between husband and wife, but in general. That people, they advise to humiliate. They advise to belittle. They advise to expose. That's why they're advising. Their intention is wrong. And if your intention is wrong, it will corrupt what? It will corrupt the results. It will corrupt the results. So you have to make sure that we have the right intention. So when you advise your husband, don't advise him because what? I like to expose, right? I like to make you for example, I like to knock you down a peg, right? You think too much of yourself. So let me advise you so I can show you that what? See, you're not as good as you think you are. Don't advise with that intention. Advise with the intention of what? Al-islah. To what? To rectify and make the person better. That's what advice, one of the root meanings of an-nasiha is what? it's iradat as-salah lil mansuhi lahu. It's that you want goodness for the one who's being advised. That you basically want something good for them. You want them to be improved. You want to make things better. Iradat al-islah or iradat al-salah lil-mansuhi lahu. طيب ثم بعد ذلك, another thing you have to what? Be fair. You have to be what? Be fair. A lot of people when they advise, they have a hard time being fair. And we talked about this previously, we'll mention it again. Avoid using words like never and always. Avoid using absolutes when you advise. Okay? You never tell the truth. Okay? You always forget to do things. Is there somebody who never tells the truth? Always forgets to do things? No, it's just that's not correct. You're being unfair. And you're exaggerating. And you have to be fair in order for them to accept the advice. Because if I know, I always tell the truth, but one time, for example, I said, for example, no, I didn't have McDonald's or whatever, right? Because I'm supposed to be on a diet, right? So I said, no, I didn't have McDonald's. I promise I didn't have McDonald's. No. And then you go and take the car and there's a bag of McDonald's in the back seat, right? Okay, and I only did it because I was craving McDonald's and I just, I cheat on my diet. Okay, you caught me, right? So the person says, oh, you never tell the truth. That's not true. And when you tell me I never tell the truth, but I'm always truthful, just at one time I cheat on my diet, then you lose credibility with me now. Because you're what? You're exaggerating. So we have to, when you advise, you want your advice to be accepted, be what? Be fair. طيب ثم بعد ذلك, check your emotions at the door. Okay, this is not an emotional affair, this is a religious affair. Advice, as the Prophet said in the hadith, ad-din an-nasiha. And he said it 3 times. Religion is sincerity and sincere advice. Leave your emotions, check your emotions at the door. It's not an emotional affair, it's a religious affair. So leave your emotions and what? Check them at the door. It's especially important for what? The person being advised. Because people do what? They go into what? Defense mode. Don't be on the defensive. Be like Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab, what did he say? He said, Rahim Allahu imra'an ahda ilayya uyubi. He said, may Allah have mercy on the person who gives me my faults as a gift. Rahim Allahu imra'an ahda ilayya uyubi. May Allah have mercy on the one who gives my faults as a gift. Listen to this, he calls his faults a gift. Why? Please help me understand, Ya Ikhwan, the logic, the rationale behind calling his faults a gift. Who can help me with that?
You tell somebody their faults, they can improve themselves, so it's like a gift. You're helping them improve.
Improve themselves before what? Before they meet Allah with that fault. That's a gift. Thank you for that. Thank you for helping me realize that what? I'm not the most generous person. I'm a little stingy. Thank you for letting me know that. Thank you for making me see from your perspective how my behavior makes you think this guy doesn't spend on me. He's not generous. He's always withholding from me. I never saw it like that. And if you hadn't told me, I would have met Allah with what? With this bad character that he doesn't like. That's a gift. You guys see that? So leave your emotions at the door. It's what? It's all about deen. It's all about religion. Huh? Which one? English or Arabic? English. He said, may Allah have mercy on the person who gives me my faults as a gift. ثم بعد ذلك, be civil, advise gently, and avoid raising your voice. Which goes back to, it kind of branches out from check your emotions at the door. Again, it's not an emotional exercise. It's a religious exercise. Be civil, advise gently, and avoid raising your voice. So, if you can't talk to the person calmly, coolly, collectedly, then just what? Just be quiet until you can. But You need to be advised civilly. You have people who, when they're advising you, you know, their eyes are red and their voice is raised and they seem so angry and they seem so charged up, fired up. It's hard to accept advice from somebody like that because you feel what? You feel you're being attacked. And when you feel that you're being attacked, what's the natural response of anyone? To defend yourself or to fight back. To defend yourself or to fight back. So do you want the person to accept your advice? Yeah. Then put them what? Put them at ease and help them put their guard down by what? It's not an attack, I'm just telling you. You know, you probably shouldn't do like that. I'd appreciate if you didn't do that. Tafthim by that, do not be judgmental or prosecutorial. A lot of people when they advise, it's like they're putting someone on what? On trial. Where were you on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 12th of March? You were at McDonald's, weren't you? No, don't put the person on trial. Not on trial. Nobody's on trial here. So don't make the person feel they're being prosecuted. Tafthim by dhalik, last but not least, don't hold a grudge. Once you've aired your grievance, move on and put it behind you. It's another thing too. Once we've had that discussion and you've given that advice, you fold it up and you do what? You throw it away. A lot of people, they hold grudges. And how do you know they hold grudges? Because they tell you 3 months down the road, hey, you remember, see, we talked about that and I told you. And it's like, okay, we talked about it and we dealt with it and I made amends. So why are we still talking about it, what? 3 months later and then a year later and then it keeps getting what? Keep drudging up what? The past. That I'm going to ask you honestly, can you fix the past? Can you go back and change it and undo what you did? Nah. But you can do what? You can change what? The present and the future. You can. So if the person has shown change, you can't keep drudging up what they did what? Years ago. If they've changed and rectified, you can't keep drudging that up, can't hold a grudge. You can't do that. You advise and you move on. The next point is set reasonable expectations. Set reasonable expectations. There are certain qualities, I'm going to introduce this by saying that there are certain qualities that Allah has, and most of His qualities are like this. They're exclusive to Him. They're exclusive to Him. Nobody can imitate, and He doesn't even like it when you try to imitate those qualities. For example, al-khalq, right? Al-ijad min al-adam, yarhamukallah. That you try to make something from nothing, right? As the Prophet said in the hadith, man adlam, man yadhhab yakhluq ka khalqillah. Who is more oppressive than the one who tries to create like Allah has what? Created. And the one who tries to create something in this world, Allah will do what? Order him to what? Breathe life into that thing in the hereafter. So that's one quality that Allah doesn't like you to what? To imitate. But there are some qualities that Allah has that you can never have the quality like He does, but He wants you to still what? Emulate it within what? Within your human capacity. So for example, we have the hadith where the Prophet said, and we mentioned this yesterday, Inna Allah rafiqun yuhibbu rifq. Allah is gentle, He loves what? Gentleness. Loves that people try to imitate this quality within their human what? Context. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbu al-jamal. Allah is beautiful, He loves what? Loves that human beings beautify themselves. Within what? Their human context. They'll never be beautiful like Allah, but within their human context, within their human capability. He also says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not place a burden on a soul beyond what it can bear. And we have a famous proverb amongst the Arabs in which they say, من أراد أن يطاع فليطلب المستطاع. Whoever wants to be obeyed, let him ask, let him request that which is what? Within people's capability. Right? من أراد أن يطاع فليطلب المستطاع. Let him request that which is achievable. So this is a quality that we're supposed to have, ya ikhwan. We don't ask people to do something which is beyond what? Beyond their capability. Okay? So we don't set ridiculous, unrealistic expectations for what? For our spouses. We don't do that. Some people do it, but it's not consistent with what? The way marriage is supposed to be in Islam. And one of the things that destroys marriages more than anything else is unreasonable expectations. And the tremendous amount of pressure that these expectations place on both of the spouses. So some wives, for example, they expect their husbands to buy them anything and everything they ask for, regardless of how much it costs. And if he doesn't, then they what? They begin to call him names like saying he's cheap, he's stingy, and he's selfish. Is it realistic for a woman to expect her husband, no matter how wealthy he is, to buy her anything and everything? It's just not realistic. It's even less realistic if he's not what? If he's not wealthy. طيب. Some husbands expect their wives to do tens of tasks a day. Tasks that might take several people to do in the same amount of time. And if they fail to get everything done, it's a task, a list of tasks, 30 tasks long. She does 29. Comes home, okay, where you at? Let me see what you did. Let me see. Oh, I did everything except one thing. Only one thing left. He says, what have you been doing all day? He starts calling her what? Lazy, unreliable, good for nothing. 29 out of 30? That's an awful average, right? All right. So these unrealistic expectations that the spouse they should remember everything. How could you forget? They should foresee future events. How could you not see this coming? They should know the unseen. Explain to me how our son got pneumonia. I mean, how am I supposed to explain that? It's just what? It's in the air and he got it. You know, I can't. They expect you to read their mind. How come you didn't pick up ice cream on the way home? I was craving ice cream. And how was I supposed to know that? How was I supposed to know that? Prevent catastrophes. How could you let a tree fall in the car? The only car we have. How could you let a tree fall in the car? I can't predict these catastrophes. There was a tornado yesterday and it uprooted the tree and it threw it down on the car. Can't. But sometimes we have these unrealistic expectations which come from what? A lot of times they come from what? The different media that are around us, and we allow those to be the sources or to be the things that set our expectations. So people read these romance novels where this guy with great hair, right? And, great physical, physical stature and an unlimited bank account, driving a great car, comes and sweeps a woman off of what? Off of her feet. And that they make that what? They make that the thing that sets their expectations. So my husband should have what? Great hair, and he should have an unlimited bank account, and he should have a great car, and this, that, and he should whisk me off my feet. And when he doesn't do that, then what? There's something wrong with the husband. Why? Not because the husband's bad, but because I have set an unrealistic expectation, which I got from what? The romance novel. Or from the internet, or from the musalsal, soap opera. You guys see that? Or from a film I watched, etc. And vice versa. So men look at magazines like Cosmopolitan, they see what? This slim model, okay? Who has 1% body fat and whatever, and so now they go home and the wife's not like that. And so there's something wrong with what? With the wife. So again, we have to avoid one of the things which will undermine what we're trying to achieve in marriage is unrealistic expectations. Setting the bar to what? Too high. It's just, nobody can reach it. It can't. And the sad thing is even if the spouse is so committed that they reach this bar, which is way out of reach, the sad thing is the person will then do what? Will raise the bar. طيب. Another important one is do not invite or permit outside interference. Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, collected by Tirmidhi on the authority of Abu Hurairah, من حسن إسلام المرء تركه لما لا يعنيه. From the excellence of a person's Islam is abandoning that which does not concern him. So according to the Prophet ﷺ, a Muslim is not supposed to stick his nose where it doesn't belong. Unfortunately, most people fail to realize that other people's marriages definitely fall into this category. And thus, it is not uncommon for outsiders to concern themselves with the private marital affairs of others, which are none of their business. It is sad that many marriages owe their demise to the meddling of outsiders, whether relatives or close friends. But what is even sadder is that some husbands and wives invite or encourage this meddling and thereby aid in the destruction of their own marriages. So basically, let's say that a couple, they have an argument. Argument gets a little heated, and the woman decides what? To leave the home to get what? Fresh air, clear her mind, okay, etc. So she goes to the house of a friend and begins to what? Vent about how the husband did this and the husband's like that, and she starts using some of those absolutes. He never does this, he always does that. And she's using these absolutes not because they're really accurate, but because she's upset. So then once she calms down and hasn't had a chance to what? Vent and get whatever's on her chest off her chest, she goes back. Her husband's also had a chance to what? To collect his thoughts, okay, and rethink some things. And so then they end up doing what? Apologizing and, making up and making amends, and everything's, good. Al-hayatu jamila, wal yawm jamil, everything is good. But his wife has done what? Has ignited a fire in the house of what? Her friend. Friend's angry. How could he do that to her? What kind of man is he? And she doesn't just keep that to herself. She's got to tell what? Other people. Yeah, can you believe what so-and-so's husband did? He did this and this. And sometimes whatever he did, it's not sensational enough. It's not really that bad. So she's forced to do what? Sensationalize it, to embellish it, right? So now she lights a fire what? In another house. And it becomes a fire amongst what? The sisters, who will then do what? Will come back to her and say, you should do this. And you should be like that. And you should behave like this. You should tell him that. And that creates what? That creates that negative peer pressure on the woman to basically behave in a way which is not becoming, not befitting, and can actually result in what? The undoing of the marriage. Another example is that every household is different. And what works in one household may not necessarily work in another. So for example, in one household A, we'll say, is that the woman basically has a revolving door. Come and go as you please. Just be here at certain times and make sure that certain things are done. Okay? But she has a revolving door with her husband. Wants to go out for lunch with her friends, doesn't have to ask permission. But when he gets home, there should be what? A meal, and she should be there. That's it. But what she does during the day, etc., she has that freedom. Household B, la. You're going to go somewhere, I need to know where it is, who it's going to be with, and I reserve the right to what? To say yay or nay. That's what works. That's what works for household A, but this is what works for household B. So what happens is that the sister from household A wants to go out with the sister from household B. Let's go for lunch. She says, okay, well, I have to ask my husband. She says, ask your husband? A'udhu billah. Ask him for what? Ask him for what? You're a grown woman. You have to ask him for. You shouldn't have to ask him for anything. So she starts to do what? She starts to project and impose what works for her in her household on Sister B in her household. Now, what works for Sister A is not going to work for husband what? For husband B. And if Sister B were to basically accept that, it's going to create problems between husband B and wife B. And people don't reflect on that. They just do what? They meddle and they impose the way that they do things on others. So, for example, wife B, she always calls or texts her husband during the day and says, "What do you want for dinner?" And he places his order. Okay? Says, I want masala, and I want this, and I want this. He places his order. Okay? And she turns off the phone and gets to what? Gets to work. Gets to banging those pots together, etc. Sister A, she makes boiled potatoes, broccoli, and, a TV dinner, whatever. And this is what I made. Take it or leave it. Right? Never ask what the husband wants. So then they're on the phone together and she says, yeah, wa alaikum salam. She says, what are you making for dinner? I haven't figured out yet. There's probably some leftovers in there. If they're not moldy, I'll give him that. What are you making? Oh, well, my husband, he said he wanted X, Y, and Z. He says, what? You ask him what he wants? No, never do that. Because he'll start expecting it. You're spoiling him. Don't do that. And so now, that might work for Sister what? A, but it won't work for Sister B. So when her husband comes home and he finds boiled potatoes, okay, he's going to be upset. And it's going to create what? Tension in the home that wasn't there and wouldn't have been there if Sister A hadn't what? Hadn't meddled. And Sister B hadn't what? Listened to her. So the moral of the story, the moral is that what? We have to be very careful about what? About letting other people what? Introduce themselves and give us bad advice, meddle into what? Our marital affairs. And research has been done that shows that one of the leading causes of what? Of strife and controversy and conflict in Muslim marriages, in marriages in general, I should say, is the meddling of what? Of outsiders. So don't let people what? From outside meddle in what? Inside. With that, we'll conclude. I'll just give you a few other considerations. The first one is it's important for couples to communicate. One of the major problems in marriages, Muslim or otherwise, is a failure to communicate. You have to communicate. If there's an issue, talk about it. Don't keep it bottled up inside and then let it fester and then ultimately explode. Talk about it. Have dialogue. Communicate. And create an environment where the other person feels comfortable saying, I don't like this. And you can what? You can accept that. Okay, you don't like that? That's okay. Next one, your spouse is not the enemy. You have to stop looking at your spouse as if what? As if they are the enemy, as if they're trying to get one over on you, and so therefore you have to dig in and hold your ground. They're not your enemy. It's not a war. It's a relationship. And both of you are trying to what? Get what you want and get what Allah wants you to get out of it. It's not they're not your enemy. In fact, they're supposed to be the closest person to you, which is part of the meaning we said of libas, lihaf. Someone who's what? Extremely close to you. Accept Islamic gender roles. Another big problem, man doesn't want to be a man. According to what Islam says. Which means what? He has to go out and earn a living and take care of his family and do what he has to do to support them. Whatever that may be, as long as it's within what? As long as it's halal. So that's not accepting that gender role, that responsibility that Islam has put on the weight of the man to be what? To be a provider, a protector, a maintainer of women. A lot of men don't want to do that. And so they don't accept that gender role. They want to live off the woman like a parasite. And that's going to create problems. Vice versa. A lot of women want to wear the pants. Okay? They want a matriarchal, family structure. Where the woman is what? is the leader, the head. She's calling all the shots. And if the man is a person of what? Of strong personality, he's not going to accept that. He's not going to willfully accept that. And that's going to create what? They're going to be banging heads all the time. Who's going to wear the pants? She puts her leg in one leg, he puts his leg in the other leg, and they end up tussling, right? So you have to accept these Islamically legislated gender roles. And the woman has to let the man lead. Doesn't mean that she can't advise him. She can't give her opinion. But she does need to what? Support him. She needs to be supportive of him, have his back, and let him lead. And if you look at the great men, there was always a great woman what? In front of them? Right. It's beside them, behind them, however you want to put it, but there was a great woman who what? Let him what? Lead. Look at the Prophet ﷺ when he first got revelation. Traumatic experience. Never experiencing like that, and none of us can imagine what that was like. He was so afraid. So like lost emotionally. And he goes back to his wife. And she did what? She propped him up. He said, "Akhafu ala nafsi." So I'm afraid for myself. I think I've lost my mind. I'm going to go insane. I'm seeing things and hearing things that nobody should see, nobody should hear. And she said, "Kalla wallah." Nay, by Allah, Allah would never what? Disgrace you, never humiliate you. And she started listing all of his what? His good qualities. Propped him up, supported him, and then did what? Was the first person to accept Islam, and then gave what? All of her wealth to finance his ministry. She didn't say, "It's my money. It's my money. I should be a prophetess," right? You just tell me what Allah said to you and I'll tell the people. It's my money. So she got in the back, got behind him and what? And pushed him from behind. Supported him from behind. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame. Is there anyone here who doesn't have the utmost respect for Khadija bint Khuwaylid? Does anybody here doesn't revere her? Doesn't look up to her? Man, woman, or child? Nah, there's nobody. Everybody has the greatest respect for her in spite of the fact that she was what? Behind Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't hold grudges. We talked about this before. Let it go. Big problem in marriages. You're holding what? Holding a grudge. Talking about things that happened 10 years ago. It's exhausting, ya ikhwan. It's exhausting. People get tired of it and they move on. Tired of talking about stands. Tired of standing in the same spot. We talked about it. We dealt with it. It was rectified. It was changed. It was altered. It was amended. Now what? Why are we still talking about something that happened 10 years ago? Holding those grudges, what? Makes people what? Move on. Don't bring your baggage from an old relationship into a new one. Okay? So people, they get married, doesn't work out, they get remarried. You got to start what? With a clean slate. Because it's human nature that you remember what? What the other person did. And as soon as that other person, the new person does something that even remotely resembles that, then you what? You go into a defense. Oh, see, you're going to be like, no. Okay? New sheriff in town. New deal. Clean slate. Okay? And one and one might equal 2. But this and this should not be what? Conflated or considered to be what? One and the same. Every person is different. Every situation is different. And you have to go into it with that mentality. Another thing that brings a lot of marriages to ruin is that you're carrying old baggage from a previous relationship and you're projecting it onto that new person. Another one, have each other's back. You have to be supportive, mutually supportive of each other. Put your pride aside. Another big problem destroys marriage is what? People are too what? Too proud. Too much pride. Too proud to admit that they're what? They're wrong. Too proud to admit they're wrong. And another thing that exacerbates this is negative peer pressure. Negative peer pressure. So for example, you have sisters in the community who will tell a sister, support a sister, even when she's wrong, with her husband. No, that negative peer pressure. That's what we talked about. Get people out of your ear. Get rid of those meddlers. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Go and admit it. And then what? And move on. And then last but not least, fear Allah. Fear Allah. Another reason why marriages, particularly in Islam, don't work out is because one or both the partners don't fear Allah. Okay? The absence of fear of Allah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah which is called At-Talaq, He mentions the fear of Allah. It's a short surah, 2 pages. But He mentions the fear of Allah like 4 or 5 times. Because why? If the fear of Allah is so critical in divorce, when people are angry and they're upset and they don't want to be together anymore. But that doesn't mean that fear of Allah has to accompany just what talaq. It has to accompany what? We wouldn't even get here if we had, inshallah, in the most cases, we wouldn't get here if we had what? The fear of Allah. Most people get to the point of divorce because they don't fear Allah. طيب, so with that, we'll conclude. If there are any questions, comments, or complaints, we'll take those. Who has a question, comment, complaint? Yes, no, تفضل شيء.
Can you comment on the effect of nowadays women, they go work and they go study and stuff like that?
Hey.
Can you comment on the Islamic view on working women and how
Hey.
does that affect the family?
طيب, I mean, from a purely Islamic perspective, the brother asked a question about the Islamic view of women working, women in the workplace. The view of Islam on women in the workplace, women working, and how that can affect the family. And obviously, if we look from a purely fundamentally Islamic perspective, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the verse in the Quran where He talks about the marital relationship, and also the Prophet in the Hadith, it clearly gives you the impression that Islam expects a man to go out and earn a living, and expects a woman to primarily stay in the home and raise the children. All right, so for example, we have the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله. So Allah, He says, men are the protectors and maintainers of women. Tells you what? Men are supposed to go out and what? Earn a living. بِمَا فَضَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Because of what Allah gave them more than He gave what? Women. Okay? وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And because of what they spend from their wealth. It's their responsibility to what? To spend on the woman. Okay? Where the woman's not responsible to spend on herself or spend on what? On the man. فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ. Okay? So the righteous woman who is obedient, حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ. She what? Preserves in His absence بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهِ. What Allah would have her what? Preserve. So it gives you the impression that the man's going to go out and earn a living, and in his absence the woman's going to do what? Protect what? Her own chastity, and protect his what? His household, and protect what? His wealth. Look after his wealth and make sure that what? It's taken care of, etc. And we have other ayat and other hadith that give this indication. Also the way of the what? The Sahaba. That basically they had these patriarchal relationships. Man would go out and work, be the head of the household, and the woman would stay home and raise the children. But over time, what happened in Muslim societies, and even now in this non-Muslim society where Muslims happen to live, is that the situation what? The situation in society economically and because due to other factors, it changed. And that changed this family what? Dynamic. And a lot of times this was done purposefully by certain forces because they did want to what? They wanted to undermine the Islamic family. So for example, in countries like Syria, when they had certain wars and when they went through the whole mandate period, and then beyond mandate period, when they start to seek their own independence, you found outside influences in certain circumstances, and this also was true in Lebanon as well, were created to make it where women, it was much more easy for them to get work than what? Than men. And so what ultimately happened, it changed that what? That dynamic. Women were going out and working and earning a living, and men were what? Sitting home. Okay? And so you have these like things happening what? Being imposed from outside. Similarly, Muslim families, they come what? They come to the West. Okay? And they come into a place, or they come into a society where it's very capitalistic. Everything's about money. And there's also a type of a lifestyle that's imposed upon you that you have to what? Maintain. And it becomes very difficult, depending on what type of occupation is held by the man, very difficult for that type of lifestyle to be maintained on one income. So that pushed what? Women out into the workforce, etc. You also have other circumstances that may push the women out into the workforce, which could be, for example, divorce, which a woman is forced then to what? To go out and work and earn to take care of herself or take care of her children who the father's not taking care of, whatever. And then if that woman were to get what? Married, and she comes into that marriage with what? Children of her own. Okay? The new husband not necessarily required to foster them, so she has to continue to pay for her own children, or she has debts. Okay? Women are forced to go out and go to school, all right, to get an occupation so they can earn a living, to take care of themselves. All these factors start to come to bear and make it where what? Some women opt to work, or they're forced to what? To work. And so that leads us to what? A question like what the brother asked. Okay, so what does Islam say about this? First of all, Islam definitely wants the family to be what? The family unit to be what? Preserved. And he wants married couples to live the way that we have seen in the presentation. He wants them to live together in the way that we've seen. And he wants us to remove anything that will challenge that or threaten that. And definitely one thing that threatens what we have talked about here is when you have husband and wife, both of them what? Working. Okay? There's no question that is what? That family dynamic that Islam wants to foster is threatened by that. Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody doubt that? Do we have to elaborate on that? How that could be threatened? Sometimes it's threatened by the fact that now the woman is earning her own what? Her own income. And she feels financially independent. So if I'm financially independent, I'm not dependent upon you, why do I have to listen to you? Why do I have to obey you? I should have just as much say. This house is just as much mine as it is yours. I pay half the mortgage. Okay? I should be able to tell you to what? To get out. And so that does happen. And it puts the man at a disadvantage now, because now he can't lead, because the wife is what? Challenging his authority and feels justified in challenging it, because she's what? She's just as much a contributor to the household, the revenue of the household, the income of the household as he is. And one of the wisdoms, and Allah knows best, why men were given that authority and that position and women were not. It's because, generally speaking, I'm not saying they're not some petty men out there. Some men are petty. But generally speaking, a man, when he gets angry with his wife, is not going to tell her, this is my house, get out of my house. But it's not uncommon, ya ikhwan, when a woman is paying for something, when she gets angry, she gets emotional, this is my house, get out of my house. This is my car, get out of the car and start walking. A woman will do that. And that's probably one of the reasons why Allah, men are the maintainers and protectors, because they won't do that. Generally speaking, I'm not saying there are not some men who will do it, but in general, men won't do that. Okay? They'll go sleep in the other room, but they won't tell the woman to get out, because this is what? It's my house. I'm paying the rent. I'm paying the mortgage, right? So long story short, what the brother's alluding to is 100% true. This is not the wada. This is not the circumstance which is encouraged. That both husband and wife work. But sometimes it's what's required because of the circumstances. But even if it is required, husband and wife need to go into it with the understanding that what? There's a certain way that the family unit is supposed to run. There's a certain structure that Allah wants us to have. Okay? There's a certain obligation we have towards each other. There's certain obligations that we have towards each other. And those obligations can't be thrown by the wayside just because you've chosen or you have to work. And there's a certain way He wants us to raise what? Our children. And that can't change because you've chosen or because you've been forced to leave the household and work or go to school, etc. I hope that kind of answers it, inshallah ta'ala.
I think sometimes that, does it put the wife in a position now that she does, because it is her money. Mm-hmm. How do we, that dichotomy there, how do we deal with that?
Well, again, that's going to be like a case-by-case basis. I personally know someone who his wife received a large settlement because of the untimely demise of her father, because of negligence by the company that he worked for. I mean, we're talking about a couple $1 million or whatever. But because of the families, the culture that they come from, the family structure and support system that they have, in spite of the fact that she's sitting on a couple $1 million, they're able to maintain that understanding that he is the provider, the protector, the maintainer of the household. He's the head of the household. And he is not tempted to what? To ask her for anything. He pays for everything. And based upon that, he has a right to what? To be the head, to be in charge, and to tell and to dictate. He doesn't allow himself to be tempted to what? To basically live a lavish lifestyle because of the money that she possesses, and then put himself in a position of weakness, a position of need, make himself beholden to her basically, and then over a barrel forced to what? Always, acquiesce to her demands. So I think that, definitely what a husband would have to do if they're going to basically accept this dual income arrangement, is that he just has to step up to the plate, even though she's making as much or more than him, and there's a temptation to say, hey, you should contribute, proportionate to what you're earning. He shouldn't give in that temptation, because it can happen that subliminally he's basically relinquishing his authority, or at least in her mind, she perceives it that, okay, well then, if I'm going to make these contributions proportionate to what I'm earning, I should also have what? Say proportionate to what I'm earning and what I'm contributing. You follow me? So I think that's one thing that this particular couple that they did, how they succeeded, and they don't have any of those issues, is that the man continued to be what? Exactly. He continued to step up and fill his role. And so the woman was comfortable in her role. I think that's a big part of it. But I would also say that if you don't have to go that route, I wouldn't invite trouble on myself. I wouldn't ask for trouble. If there's no need, but yeah, she has a profession, whatever it is, and she can earn, equal to or greater than what the husband is earning. But if that's not something that they need, that basically he's able to adequately provide for their needs, and they can live the type of lifestyle that suits what? Someone of their status and class, so to speak, then just suffice yourself with that. Be content with that. Because I just think, like I said, it's a danger that you don't want to invite on yourself, and it can.
So that kind of falls on the wife as well. That the husband says, "Hey, we're gonna live off of what I make, and what you make, that's yours.
Hey.
But we're gonna live off of what I make."
Right.
But she's like, hey, but we can have this bigger house if we include some of my stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally, my personal advice. Yeah, I wouldn't invite that. I would not invite that. And again, it's probably better anyway to live a more austere life and avoid the problems that may come from, opening that door that you may never be able to close it. And we have to understand that, as I know we said in his Riyadh Salihin, he said, as-salama la ya'diluha shay. He said, being on the safe side, nothing can what? Nothing can compare to that. Nothing can equate to what? Being on the safe side, or being what? Avoiding harm and just being in a state where everything is good. As-salama la ya'diluha shay. Nothing can compare to that. And our deen is based upon al-ihtiyat. Our deen is based upon taking what? Our precautions. As Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, ad-deenu mabniyun ala dar' al-mafasid wa taqliliha wa jalb al-masalih wa takmiliha. He said the religion is based upon avoiding harm as much as possible. Whenever you can't avoid it entirely, minimizing it. And so now, whenever I have, and we also have the qaida that the scholars have mentioned, dar' al-mafasid muqaddam ala jalb al-masalih. Avoiding that which is harmful is always given precedence over what? Bringing about benefit. So yeah, we have the potential benefit of what? This bigger house, better lifestyle. But the harm that hangs in the balance is that our whole marital structure and relationship could what? Spin, out of control. The harm outweighs what? The benefit. And so we just what? Live according to what our means and what I'm able to provide, etc.
They're taken care of. Is that okay for them to continue their education so they can, if need be able to take care of their families in the future?
Wallahi, Islam is not opposed to a woman being educated. Islam is not opposed to a woman being educated. And the first verse that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ was Iqra. Read. Scholars of Islam, they extracted from that this ummah, Allah began the revelation of the Quran with the words read. That this ummah, this community, this religious community is supposed to be a community which does what? Reads, educates itself. It's never satisfied with remaining stagnant when it comes to what? Knowledge. And that knowledge isn't just confined to knowledge of what? Islam. But knowledge of what? Everything. And there was a period where the Muslims, they were the leaders in scholarship in every discipline. You name it. Engineering, leaders. Medicine, leaders, cutting edge. People would come from other parts of the world to learn medicine and engineering and chemistry and etc. All these different science and disciplines from who? From the Muslim. Islam is not opposed to education for men or women. And so there's nothing wrong if you tell your daughters to get educated. But you do need to basically make them understand, as you so eloquently pointed out, and this is where there's a disconnect, is that there's a difference between go get educated because you need to what? You need to fend for yourself, never depend upon a man, never rely upon men. Men are no good. And, what's yours is yours and get yours. And there's a difference between filling their head with that and telling them to what? Get educated, because Islam encourages education. And get educated because if there is a need for you to what? To have an occupation because of a need, then you'll be able to what? Do that. There's a big difference between that and just telling them to get educated for the sake of being educated because they should be independent. Because I'm honest with that approach, it undermines everything. It's one of the reasons why a lot of marriages are not working out, because women are going into it with the wrong attitude, that they're looking at themselves as someone that they're looking at themselves, not accepting the gender roles in Islam as assigned, and they're basically saying, I'm just as good, I'm better, I don't have to listen to you, I don't have to cook, I don't have to clean, I don't have to do anything, any wifely duties, I have my career. And they're going into marriage with that attitude, and that's becoming the undoing of Muslim marriages. So to answer your question, if what you're doing is what you described, then no, Islam is not opposed to that. Islam is not opposed to that. But I will say this, is that because Islam does tell us that we take by the means, and then we do what? That tawakkal Allah. That we do whatever is within our power to prevent or to bring about a certain result, and then we put our trust in Allah. So yeah, there's no harm in the approach you're taking, but just make sure you're taking the approach that you described, and that you're not taking an approach which will be the undoing potentially of your daughter's relationships in the future, if that answers it. طيب. Anything else? We can take a quick break, and then we'll do the children's portion, inshallah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد.